Hello my friends, how are you doing? Here is my online course for the winter pack for the January looks. So let's get started with that. In the first part, I'm going to show you how to use the pack. In the second part, I'm also going to show you different techniques that I use to get certain looks, to get certain styles for winter photos, because that's a bit more complex. I will also explain you the reason why that is the case. Okay, so the first thing that is important here is you have these styles here on the side. As you can see here, I have 10 styles for closer photos like this, and then I have another 10 styles that are intended for wider shots like this. You can find them down here where it says wide, right? And so how you get them in here is that, first of all, what you want to do is to locate your styles window. Now, if you don't see this down here, you want to go to View and then to Studio and make a hook next to styles down here. So this is checked, and then you will see the window here on the right side, usually down here in that area. Now, how to import these styles into Affinity Photo is pretty easy and straightforward. While you have this Styles tab selected, click on these three lines over here, so you get a little menu for styles, and there says Import Style Category, so click on that, and then select this here, this file located inside of your download folder from what you have downloaded from Gumroad, and then simply click on Open. And this will import the styles. Here it says already exists because, of course, I already have them in here. But usually if you do that, it's in there. And then it's the end of the list, as you can see down here. I have another one here that I created. Don't worry about that. But for you, this is going to be at the end of the list. Okay, so how are you going to use that? Now, here are two important things you need to do. First of all, you need to create a rectangle that you put over the image, like so. Over here on the left side, rectangle tool, and then click and draw this out over the image so it covers all of the image. That's pretty important. And then you can click on the styles. Now, what happens in that case is that this will change the fill. You can see here now the fill is a gradient. It also changes the blend mode. In this case, it's add as a blend mode, and it will also, in this case not, but in other cases, and adjust the blend options here for the underlying composition range. All right, so here are two very important things to realize when you're using that. First of all, it's very important that you know that over here you have this gradient tool, and as long as you have your rectangle selected and then select also the gradient tool, you can see the gradient. So if we zoom out here, you can see that here we have our gradient. This is the center, this is the origin point, and then we have two arms that you can move. You can move them together like so, and you can also move them individually, but for that you have to unlock them up here. You can see there's a little lock icon. If this is dark, it means it's locked, and if you click on that and it's gray, like you see a little bit lighter from the gray, then it's unlocked, and you can move these arms individually. No, actually not, because this is radial. It's not elliptical. If you switch it over to elliptical, then you can move them individually, as you can see here. Sorry for that. So usually when they come, they are radial, and then you have to switch it over to elliptical and also unlock these arms. All right, good. Another thing that's pretty important here is that we can move the origin point. You can click and drag this around, and as you can see, this will define where the light is coming from, how the light is working in our picture. And of course, that is very important and depends on how we have taken the picture. You can, of course, also move this outside of the picture. That's also important. And by dragging these arms, you can also resize the gradient. So you can see here, I can make this a lot bigger, or I can make this a lot smaller depending on how I move my arms. So if I move this outside here and then make the arms longer, this will create a really big gradient. And because of that, I will have a very soft blend here of the light that is coming in. And you can see how effective that is in changing my picture to something else and having a completely different situation in my photo. This is what we want to create. Just the putting in the emotion, the artistic expression, the kind of look that we feel is right for that situation. independent of what has been there before. Now, another thing that is really important to understand is that a blend mode reacts with the colors and also with the brightness of the colors in the picture. And this is really good for us because the add mode is in its nature used, as you can see here, to overexpose things. It makes it brighter where it has contact with these bright areas. It makes them even brighter. But what we can do here is that we can put an adjustment for curves like so in between our rectangle and the original picture down here. You can see I have a lot of picture layers in here because I also want to show you the effect on other pictures. For you, there's probably only going to be one picture. Now, as you can see here, I have here my curves adjustment and I have my rectangle on top of that. So now if I make my picture darker, you can see that the effect of my rectangle is going to be different, and I can use that for my purposes. For example, in the case that I'm saying I'm going to make the dark areas darker and then still push up the bright areas, and you can see how this gives me a completely different result from what we have had before. So this is without the curve, and this is with the curve. You can see how effective this is in really designing the light, adjusting the light wherever I wanted to have a light. You can see, so I can push this down, I can push this up, depending on what I want to have. Also, what you can do here is to switch between these different styles. Now, there's one thing to look out for though, that is a little bit of a downside with styles, is that they always jump back to their original situation. So if I click here, you can see, oh, I'm on the curves. There, this is good that this happened. If this happens to you, you have applied the style to the curve instead of to the rectangle, and then you get this, and this doesn't look good. This is not what we are looking for. So if that happens, simply on your keyboard go Control Z to undo it, or up here on Edit, go to this first menu point here, Undo. And then it's undone, and switch over to the rectangle. And when I click here now, you can see that this will switch over to another style. But what you have also seen is that now my gradient is again in this original position. You can see how this moves around. So that's a bit strange, to be honest, with the styles, why it will also memorize that. So keep that in mind. But it's not the end of the world, right? And you can see here now we have another light situation. Again, if we use our curve, we have already the curve applied, by the way. So this is kind of overexposed. It's too much. It's not what we want to have here. So what we're going to do is to use a curve adjustment. And as you can see here, when I pull down these values, when I pull down these values, the light is having a different kind of quality for me. And also the colors. You can see here, when I reset this, this is too much, but then I pull this down over here, and now I get a lot more color in here. I get some of the details back in here in this other overexposure. And so through that, I'm getting a really interesting, cool effect that I can really adjust and fine tune with my curve. So this is where this is becoming really powerful to apply this to my image. And the good thing also is that the curve is going to stay the same. So if I switch my style over to another style, the curve is not affected by that, as you can see here, because it's on a different layer. So if you want to, you can quickly, again, I have done the mistake. You can quickly switch through different styles and see what kind of results you get. And then also, of course, adjust them afterwards to get more what you want to have in there. For example, this is going to be a little bit too extreme with our curve because it makes the color too intense in our image. So we can reset that. And then I can say, I want to have more blue in the darker areas, and then I want to have less color in the brighter areas. So I can push this up here a little bit like so. That's pretty good. And then you can also, if you want to, like I said before, move this out here and then make this a little bit bigger like so. And so now we have a rather soft blend going from over here where we have this kind of sunset pink situation over here to the blue. And of course, if you think that that is a little bit too much, you can also reduce the opacity to just introduce a hint of that. You can see if I go to 0, nothing is applied. And then if I push this up, more and more of that comes into play and creates an interesting light situation for my picture. All right. Let's have a look at some other pictures here on how we can use it there. So I will delete these 2 layers and then we simply switch over to another photo. For example, this photo here. And here we have a similar situation. In this case, we want to use the white. Oh, before already was a white style. So look out for that also a little bit. You can, of course, use the close styles on white picture and vice versa. They are not limited to that. It's just a suggestion on where to use them. Okay, so again, let's create our rectangle here like so. This already has the last style applied, and let's click on this anyways. So now we also have the adjustments in the style with the blend mode. And in this case, I think, no, this also doesn't have adjustments here. Okay, never mind that. Again, we're going to create an adjustment for curves in between our rectangle and our image that we have in this case here on that layer. And now again, if I pull this down, you can see that we can create some really interesting light situations with that. And this is what it makes so much more versatile, because it's not just one style that you apply with a click. You can really change it, morph it into a completely different situation. You can also move this point over here, so the black point is getting darker. And by that, as you can see, the color have less effect because of course this kind of area in the picture is getting darker and is getting more black than before, right? Okay, so that's really interesting. We can pull this down here again a little bit, and maybe if we want to, we can push this up a little bit, so you can see that you can really create some dramatic, some dramatic, interesting light situations here, as strong or as weak as you want it to be. And let's go to our rectangle and click through some of them. So here we have a different kind of more soft situation. We still, again, we can pull this down here. So we want to have, for example, a little bit more light here in the brighter areas like so. So we get an even more dramatic light like so. Really play around with the curve. That is very important here. Okay, by the way, now that we have like understood how to use the rectangles and the styles and the curve to create a certain look, what you also want to do, and this time you want to put the adjustment layers on top of the rectangle, is that, for example, you can also create here a vibrance adjustment, like I said, on top of the rectangle. So this is influencing everything that's below our rectangle, including the curve. So when I push this around here, you can see when I push more saturation in here, you get more colors. The color are intensifying. You can remove a little bit of the vibrance here. And through this, you can again really influence how the image is looking. As you can see here, this now has a more dominant yellow shine, and this down here has a more colorful blue in there. You can see this is without my vibrance adjustment. This is with the vibrance adjustment, right? Another thing that I would suggest to you that you play around with is color balance, because this also gives you a good way to adjust the specific colors you want to have in your image afterwards. So for example, we can play around here, and you can see how when I change between cyan and red for the midtones, look at, for example, this area, how when I push this over here, the blue is reaching further up the mountain, and when I push this over here, this orange and yellow is coming further down the mountain. At the same time, if you look over here where the tree is, how the blue is changing. So here it's a deeper blue, of course, more a cyan blue, and when I move this over here, you get more of a how can I say, a navy blue, a light navy blue in that kind of area. And you can also play around with the other values. You can see here how this influences. This makes it a little bit too green maybe, but if you like, that's also good. Or you can push it over into the magenta, giving everything a little bit of a warmer touch. So there's a lot of possibilities in here how to play around with these kind of settings to create specifically the look that you want to have and really change the image into something that you imagine it to be. Let's turn all of these off real quick. So you can see this is the original picture. It's a nice picture, of course, but here with our changes applied, the picture has become a lot more dramatic, a lot more interesting to look at, and also a little bit more of a story in there, you know, where this is kind of the dawn coming in, nice warm light coming from the side into that frosty situation that we have on the ground. So that's pretty cool. All right, so this is basically how you use that pack. Play around with the different styles, especially use the curves to adjust how strong it is. A thing that I want to point out that's really important is that specifically this pack is very dependent on what kind of image you have to use it on. It will work great with some pictures and not so great with other pictures. What I've found is that it often works really good in situations where you have this kind of fog situation here, or also in this case where you have this kind of bokeh in the background, where you have this kind of muddy white situation there. So the styles, the colors of the styles, the adjustments you do can really apply good to the image, can really be soaked up by the image. My cat is joining us. Okay, he's moving away. All right. Now we're going to look at something else. So here we have a classic winter picture, and I just want to show you how I would address this kind of photo to make it more interesting. Again, something that I've shown you in my last tutorial is that, and this will really surprise you this time, we use the rectangle and we set it to a color of 50 gray. So you go to color over here and then select grayness, set this to 50. There we go. So we have a medium gray. And now look at that. If we switch over to luminosity, this will show us the main colors that we can work with in the picture. I will also create an adjustment like in my tutorial for vibrance and really push up the saturation so we see the colors better. And the surprising thing here is that we again have a lot of blue, and also we have a lot of orange in here, which you wouldn't have expected from that area in the picture. Let's turn this off again, like so, and you can see, you would think initially, because our eyes trick us, that these colors here are actually green because the trees, as we know from nature, are green, but because of the light situation and because of the picture, this is actually more like orange and brown tones. As you can see here, there's a little bit of green in here, but most of that is more an orange and a brown tone. So that's really, really interesting for us. So here are some different ways to tackle that. First of all, I now know I have to mainly address the blue values in the picture, but we can also look at the picture and see what else do we want to do here? What else do we want to address here? Okay, so some adjustments that I would suggest to you is, for example, first of all, make the picture a little bit brighter. So for that, I'm going to use my curves here, and I'm going to push this up to make it a little brighter. And then I'm going to push this side down. Maybe like so. That's already pretty good. We can also move this side. Let's see if we move this in a little bit. That's okay. Good. Like so. So you can see already the picture is clearer, is brighter. We have more of an attention in the picture, right? Another thing I want to have down here is that I want to have more structure in the snow in the picture. So I'm going to create an adjustment layer for clarity. In this case, push up the clarity. You can see that clarity often snaps to the last layer you have applied it to. I usually want to have it individually as a layer. So click and drag this out here. And then I will push up the strength, and you can go by taste here. You can see if you look here in the area in the front that this gets a little bit more structure. Also the clouds in the background here get a little bit more structure. So that's pretty cool. It makes the picture a little bit more intense, and I feel like also gives it a little bit more depth. So that is also very nice. All right, next thing, of course, what we are going to do here is to use a selective color adjustment. And in this case, we don't need to address the reds. They're not really reds. We don't need to address the greens, as we know in this case. So I want to go directly to the cyans, push up the blue a little bit, and then see from the blue color what I want to have in my sky. So you can see here, this is the original color, but I want it to be a little bit more this kind of ocean blue in the sky. Let's see when we play around with the yellow. This gives me a nicer blue if I reduce the yellow a little bit. So yeah, go with your eyes for that. Again, I push up the blue a little bit. Let's see here. Like so is good. Just a tiny touch. And then, yes, also remove again a little bit more of the yellow. Another of my cats is coming. I'm sorry, and he's gone again. Okay, they tried to visit me today. Okay, interesting. So let's play with the yellow values in here a little bit. Let's see what this gives us. There's not too much in here. Just playing around with this a little bit. Doesn't really make too much changes here. Magenta, the blue. So we can play here with the white colors. Should we do some changes here? Yes, maybe push this down a little bit. You can see this is warming up the picture a bit if we reduce the blue values, because then the other values are left over. And so those are the warmer colors, so that's pretty good. You can also play around with the yellow values. Maybe reduce this also a little bit, so that's pretty good. Okay, let's see for the neutrals. Neutrals often have a very intense impact, so I wouldn't change that too much. I'm gonna make it a little bit darker, so give a little bit more black just to have a little bit more contrast. And then for the blacks, we could also see if we want to push a little bit this into it. You can see especially with the trees over here, if I pull this over, this is going to go a lot brighter here. Doesn't look good, doesn't look very muddy. So it can look good in other pictures, but in this case it's not perfect. So I will push this over a little bit. So again, the black colors here, the shadows get a little bit darker, and we have a really interesting, nice result from that. Good. As a last touch, I would probably add a vignette here. If I can find it, that is. There we go, vignette. Again, this snaps to the last selected layer. It's a little bit annoying. So let's push this up here, reduce the exposure, reduce the hardness, make it bigger, like so. So you just play around with these values and then go with your taste, see whatever feels good to you from the look. But you can see here now that we come in like that from these adjustments we have done so far, that when I put this up here, this is the original image, that we really have cleared it up and made it more center focused and made the blue more intense. So that's a really interesting look and a kind of way I would handle this. I would go into this kind of editing situation. All right, so that's one of them. Another thing I want to show you here, let's delete all these layers. Again, this is a little trick that I want to show you now. Again, I'm going to make this, let's try exposure here to push this up to make this a little bit brighter. Not that much though, just a tiny bit like so. That's pretty good already. So this is a little different approach. And now what I want to show you is that we use HSL adjustment, because most colors in here are blue colors, as we know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the sky blue up here, and now we're going to do something really cool. We're going to move over our hue. We shift the hue, and you can see I can now go into this kind of more teal color, right? And that's a pretty cool look that you will find often online. And you can see how easy you can create it in a picture that's basically just white and blue and some gray values in between. So that is really amazing that this can be so easily done. I will push this a little bit down. You can make this really intense. If you want to have it really atomic, you can go for that too. But I want to have it a little bit slighter, just a little bit like this, for example. That looks pretty okay. Again, I'm going to put in some clarity here just to pump this up. Let's actually put some more clarity. Again, this snap to this layer, like I said, a little bit annoying. Let's push this up. Actually, you can see now I have a nice structure for my clouds. One thing you have to look out for if you do that is that you can see here, I get also the noise from the picture is intensifying with the clarity. So that can be a little bit of a downside. But what you can do about this is that you can push this up, and then with clarity selected, go to layer invert. So it's applied to nothing. And then you simply use a brush. This is a little bit too big as a brush, to be honest. Like so. And then we set this to white, like so. And now I can simply paint this in here. Flow hardness, this should actually be good. Ah yeah, you can see here now the effect is coming back, and I can paint this exactly where I want it to be. And just there, not on the rest of the image, right? So you can see here, I can decide exactly where I feel like this kind of clarity should happen. And because I can do that, what I can also do is to reduce it. So I can use it very partially on my pictures. You can see here, if I feel like here in this area and in this area it shouldn't be that strong, I can go back to black, for example, and I can, let's make the brush a little bit bigger here so it has a softer edge, and I can simply paint this in here, and you can see how now the clarity is removed from that area and the clarity is removed from that area, and in that way I can also focus the attention more to the center of the image. And I can see how with just a little bit of adjustments, especially with the HSL adjustment, we have really changed the look of the picture. Again, let's go to the before picture and go to the after picture. So that's a pretty intense change and a really cool style also. Yeah, all right, let's go to something else that I want to show you here. I might need to import that picture though. One second, let me delete all these layers here first. And then, actually, I'm just going to open up the other picture. Let's open here and then go to downloads, and down here, and here I have my forest, right? Okay, so again, what I want to do here is to create some light up here with my overlay. So I'm going to go over here, and forest pictures can be pretty difficult to adjust sometimes. This is why I want to specifically show you that. So let's play around with the settings we have here. This is not too bad. Let's move this in the middle, for example, like so. And then also let's move this up a little bit like so. That is pretty nice. Okay, it's too intense. I get that. Don't worry about that. We will address that in a second. Again, make a curves adjustment in between these two layers. And then I'm going to push this down over here to make the rest of the forest a little bit darker. And so you can see we have a very nice blue down here. We have some nice light situation up here. The picture is a little bit blurry in its nature. All right, so what we can do here is to reduce this effect a little bit to make it more natural, like so. And just like that, as you can see, we have created an interesting change for our forest from before and after, and also separate the top of the trees from the trunk of the tree. So we have two different areas in the image. Of course, like I said before, you can now play around with these different adjustments and see if maybe another one is more to your liking. Let's go to the white adjustments down here. This one, for example, is not too bad. This one is also interesting. So here we have a more natural light on the lower part. And of course, like I said, when you have your gradient tool selected and your rectangle selected, you see these points, you see these handles here, and you can move that up. So you can see I can push this up, so it's just in that area here. And I can also push this outwards of my image, doesn't have to be in the image. And so you can do even a slider adjustment. That's also okay, don't worry about that. If you want to have just a tiny touch of a change for the picture, you can do that. Let's duplicate this, put it on top so you see the before and after. So this is our starting picture and this is our end picture. And so you can see that we have a very nice light situation in here. Now, another thing I want to show you, it's pretty important, especially with these rectangles, is, like I said, you can go in here to the blend ranges. In this case, you can see there is one applied automatically by the style, but you can, of course, readjust it depending on the picture you're working on. So, for example, the way to explain this is that this reacts to the images and, this reacts to the brightness we have in our source picture. This is why it says underlying composition, because this is everything that's below our rectangle layer. So it reacts to the brightness of everything that's below our rectangle layer. And you can see here, if I move this down like so, and I move these points over, let's reset this real quick so you can actually see that. If I move this down here like so, you can see that now the adjustments are not applied to my darker areas. You can see here, now they are applied to the dark areas, and now they are less and less applied to the dark areas. And in that way, I can really decide how much light do I want to have on what, and also how much do I want that light to affect also shadows and darker areas. Because I can overexpose that area. I can have too much light in that area if I want to have that look, but I can also say I want it to have more realistic, and in that case, the darker areas still have to stay dark, even if light is shining on the brighter area. So this is why this kind of composition ranges are very, very useful for this kind of case. So you can see now, if I've pushed this over here like so, the effect is slighter, but it's also more natural on the picture. So that's how you use that. Play around with all of that. There's a lot of fun to be had with this kind of styles and with these kind of effects and everything I've shown you so far in the tutorial. Winter picture can be a little bit difficult. It doesn't always react well because it's kind of difficult to adjust areas that are bright, because in brightness there is not much information, while in darkness and the shadow areas there's a lot more information in there. This is why it's also a lot easier to apply effects to, for example, a night picture compared to a day picture, because the day picture is brighter. So look out for that, but still experiment with that, see what you can do with that. There is so much cool things you can do with these winter pictures, and it's a little bit of an underrated time of the year because, well, everything is snow and such, but you, as you have seen, can do really, really cool stuff. All right. I hope this was exciting and interesting for you. See you in my next tutorials. Bye.